Growth doesn't always feel like progress. Sometimes it feels like tension, like something is off. Not fully broken, but like you're seeing something more clearly. But clarity is not making life easier. Sometimes seeing clearly is what creates the pressure. Because once something is noticed, it can be difficult to return to how it was before. And that tension can begin to show up in ways that you don't expect. In the body, in relationships, in the environments around you. Not all at once, but gradually. You're listening to The Occult and the Apocalypse, where we explore the hidden and the revealed through patterns, symbolism, and awareness. Not to predict, but to notice, and not to conclude, but to understand. In the last episode, we explored how individual awareness can begin to overlap. Different people noticing things at the same time, within the same environment, or living within similar circumstances. But overlap does not always mean alignment, because even when awareness is present, it does not emerge in the same way or at the same time. Two people can live inside the same household, the same family, or the same workplace, and still be in very different places internally. And when those differences begin to show, friction can begin to form. When individual growth begins to overlap, differences in timing, perspective, and readiness can create friction that becomes part of the collective journey. Not because anyone is doing something wrong, but because people are not always in the same place at the same time. One person may be trying to slow down while another is still reacting quickly. One person may be questioning something while another is still very certain. One person may be ready for change while another is still comfortable with how things have always been. One person wants honesty while another wants to avoid discomfort. One person may feel called forward while another is focusing on keeping things familiar. And those differences don't always stay internal. They begin to show up in tone, in patience, in distance, and in silence. Sometimes that friction shows up internally. You begin to notice something, but you do not yet know what to do with it. You can't respond the way you used to, but the new response doesn't fully feel stable yet. So you may be caught between two versions of yourself, the old response and the emerging one. And that can feel like tension in the body. It might be a tightening in the chest, a pull in the stomach, restlessness that doesn't really settle. You could have difficulty sleeping, racing thoughts at night, and exhaustion during the day. A sense of being pulled in two different directions at once, kind of like there's something asking for your attention, but not fully revealing why. Sometimes you know something is changing before you know what it means. Sometimes that friction shows up in relationships. There was a short period of time where something very small came into my space, and it did not feel small at all. My ex-husband, my then husband, had found a bird, a parakeet, out in the wild, and it was injured. He brought it home for me to take care of. When he brought this bird to me, I was frustrated. I felt like I was being handed yet another responsibility in a space where I was already holding a lot. I had a full-time job, there were already children, and there were already animals to care for. And as if that wasn't enough, I didn't want a bird. I don't believe in keeping birds. I think it's cruel. So I did not want this bird. But at the same time, there was something else happening around me. This bird looked exactly like a bird from my childhood. And I found myself calling it by a name without even really thinking about it. I was calling it the name of my grandmother's bird. And she is a woman I had a deep connection with when she was alive and even after. So there was this contradiction. I was resentful, but also pulled toward it. Now, during those days, I was taking care of it, trying to figure out where it came from, trying to help it recover. It had been injured, while also feeling like I didn't want to be in this position at all. And everything felt inconsistent. When I was alone with this bird, there were moments of calm. I would actually find myself talking to it like I would talk to a friend or my grandmother. My space would kind of quiet down. Things felt steady, peaceful even. And in those moments, it was like the day, felt lighter. But when he was there with me, with the bird, everything shifted. There was tensions, conversations felt different. Honestly, the room felt different. And truthfully, my body felt different. There was this push to keep something that I already knew I did not want. And underneath it, there was an awareness that something was definitely not aligned. Nothing had fully broken, and nothing had been said directly, but something just did not feel right. It felt like I was holding something that was not actually mine to hold, while also being pulled to it anyway. And that tension did not always show up in like a clear moment. It showed up in many small ways. In the body and in the space. In the way the environment felt. depending on who was present. There would be calm and then tension, quiet and then a lot of pressure. It wasn't dramatic, but it was consistent. And consistency matters. Because when tension becomes constant, it can begin to shape how you live. And sometimes that friction can lead to conflict. Not always in obvious ways, but in subtle shifts. In tone, in distance, in what is said, and in what is not said. Conversations may feel shorter, heavier, more guarded. You may start to prepare yourself before someone even enters the room. You may begin measuring how much energy a conversation will take. And you may notice relief when someone leaves. And once you notice things like that, you cannot fully go back. Awareness doesn't remove tension. Sometimes it makes it more visible, and that visibility can feel uncomfortable because now it has a shape. Now, in psychology, this kind of tension is often understood as a mismatch in emotional and behavioral patterns. People regulate through each other. When one person shifts and the other does not, that difference can create discomfort. Researchers have also observed that when awareness begins to change faster than behavior, it can create internal strain. A sense of knowing something without yet being able to act on it consistently. This often appears in life transitions, relationship strain, identity shifts, and boundary development, or periods where someone is outgrowing an old pattern before the new one is fully embodied. And that is often when friction begins to appear. And in those moments, the goal is not to resolve everything immediately. It's really simply to notice, to recognize when tension is present without needing to force alignment. To sit in it long enough to understand what inside of you is being activated. Because sometimes the reaction is not just about that moment. It may touch fear of conflict or fear of being alone or fear of disappointing others, over responsibility, people pleasing, the belief that peace must be maintained at any cost. And when those things are touched, they become visible. And visibility is often where change begins. Now, that awareness takes time. The presence of friction does not mean the journey has stopped. It means something is shifting. And sometimes that shift needs time before it becomes clear. And sometimes it becomes clear in ways that you would not expect. Not through one dramatic event, but through many small recognitions. Because when tension continues and begins to build, it can start changing how we experience ourselves, our lives, and the people around us. So growth doesn't always feel like peace. Sometimes, often even, it feels like tension that has not resolved yet. And that tension might be part of how awareness moves us forward. So, where in your life might tension be showing up? Not as something to fix, but as something to notice. But I'll leave that for you to think about. Thank you for being here and for helping me take the occult and the apocalypse and see it as just the hidden and the revealed. Come back next week when we start exploring what happens when tension continues long enough to demand change. I'll see you there.